people on television, people in sitcoms have been hired by the government to throw you off the track, to distract you, to make you laugh, make you happy and docile, so you don't know what's really going on.
Jim Carrey has been trying to tell you something as clearly as he could without risking his life. Because I think what people are calling a Jim Carrey clone at the Cesar Awards is actually the sight of a man who saw too much but could say too little.
Like a double.
It's fantastic.
Like a Jim Carrey double.
He's not talking like Jim Carrey, the world-famous A-list actor who's had gigantic smash movies. He's not talking like that at all.
But as the curtain finally falls off of Hollywood and the ruling elite, his past warnings sound like an eerie prophecy come to life. Subscribe to Elites Exposed for more, and tell me what you see behind Jim Carrey's eyes here.
I really took on a pretty big challenge trying to do my speech in French. So, I wrote it and I researched it and I practiced it like crazy. But, it's, then I watched everybody like talking 1,000 miles an hour up there receiving their awards. And I was like, I'm dead.
Now, I'll grant you, I've never seen Jim Carrey's face look as puffy as this, or his voice as somber as what you just heard. And it just jolts you so much more when you contrast it with the manic comedic energy he's carried in his entire career.
I've done this a few times now, and it's using a decoy.
I'm sorry, a decoy.
Using a decoy, it sounds so ridiculous, but it works like a charm.
Like a double.
It's fantastic.
Like a Jim Carrey double.
A Jim Carrey double.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing.
So what I do is I send him off in one direction, sucks all the press in that direction, and I can just have my day. And
whatever you want to do.
Wherever I want, totally unmolested. It's fantastic.
But here's the truth. You can either call this Jim Carrey a literal clone, or you can recognize that this is what a 64-year-old man looks like after having seen the pointless circus of Hollywood for decades that so many people still idolize and envy from the outside. Because if you're someone like Joe Rogan here, both of those theories may sound plausible to you, but only one of them maps onto Jim Carrey's life and his subtle warnings about the rot inside the industry.
If they're telling you that there's no clones, the guy telling you is probably a clone. At this point, I have no doubt that they've made human clones. They've made dog clones. You can get your dog cloned. If your dog's gonna die, you can get the DNA from your dog, get a puppy, and it'll be eerily similar to your dog. They think including some personality traits, which is just very bizarre, very Pet Cemetery.
Right.
But if they can do that, why can't they do that to people?
I just watched Jim Carrey on when he did Andy Kaufman.
Yeah. You know what's really interesting with him? He's taken like a severe psychological and I guess philosophical turn where he's just thought about life and things. He must have had like some psychedelic experiences too.
I think so. Sounds like it.
Yeah, because he's just talking about like what matters and what doesn't matter. And and there's just a bunch of like interviews and clips of him discussing things where you're like, whoa, like this guy he's not talking like Jim Carrey, the world-famous A-list actor who's had gigantic smash movies. He's not talking like that at all. He's like talking like some guy who's just trying to sort of understand his place in the universe.
Yeah, he really is.
Really profound way. He's a very well thought out guy.
And I'll tell you an open secret. What Joe Rogan mentioned there is precisely the moment that Hollywood and the industry's gatekeepers didn't know what to do with Jim Carrey anymore. And that's despite the fact that he can pull crowds and fill theaters like few other names can. Because while Hollywood loves pretty faces and mindless jesters, it hates artists that take a more somber, philosophical, and rebellious route. Because those are the people that risk breaking the illusion for the audience and make it far harder to monetize that brainless circus.
I felt like Hollywood is just spineless, en masse. And it really felt like, oh, this is a really clear indication that we're not the cool club anymore.
I think in the case of Jim Carrey, that's exactly what happened. He was the jester who saw behind the curtain. And using the plausible deniability of humor, Jim was being as direct as he could be in trying to tell you that this circus of Hollywood and the media were meant to distract you from the rot and corruption at the top.
Is that a gang sign? Have you...
Oh, like you don't know what it is. You don't know what that is.
I have no idea.
You don't know. Jimmy Fallon doesn't know. David Letterman doesn't know.
We don't know.
All the comics and show business don't know what this is. Right? Yeah.
What is it?
Come on, Jimmy. Seriously, the time is up. People are hip to this kind of stuff. For years now, talk show hosts, people on television, people in sitcoms have been hired by the government to throw you off the track, to distract you, to make you laugh and stuff like that, make you happy and docile so you don't know what's really going on.
And I have to say, with the kinds of disturbing revelations that have come out in the last few years about the people in power, Jim Carrey's warnings sound like a desperate plea for people to see the truth. Because let's think a layer deeper. The reason Jim Carrey was ever able to escape the hypnosis of the Hollywood glitter and the treadmill of hedonism in his life is because he had the ultimate power in the industry. And that's the ability to say no.
What I want doesn't stem from show business generally. I mean, I started out with many desires as far as this business goes, and I've so surpassed all of them that it's not as meaningful to me anymore. I really love the work itself. I've examined myself on several occasions. Why am I really doing this? Am I doing this because I want to be famous? And I think there was an element to that when I started out. Sure. I had a job. At least in my own mind, and that was to make my mother feel better. And I think ultimately, I imitated my father. He was a very funny guy. But also, I felt some need, and maybe, I don't know whether they created it or I created it, but I felt a need to make them feel that their life was worthwhile, that they did something special just by the very fact that they brought me into the world. Yeah. So from a very young age, I wanted to convince them that I was a miracle. And then I wanted to convince the world that I was a miracle. and now I want to convince the world that I'm just like them.
Because when you say no, you take back power and leverage. When an actor can say no to a $20 million movie, he cuts off the system that forces him to be docile and marketable. When they can say no to going down a path of lust and degeneracy, they've cut off the strings of blackmail anyone could have on them. And in the case of Jim Carrey, knowing when to stop and say no is what has allowed him to keep his sanity and integrity intact for nearly 4 decades, despite the swamp he was swimming in.
I feel like, and this is something you might never hear another celebrity say as long as time exists, I have enough. I've done enough. I am enough. I am at the top of the mountain, and I was, and the only one I hadn't freed was myself. And that's when my search for identity deepened. I wondered who I'd be without my fame. Who would I be if I said things that people didn't want to hear? Or if I defied their expectations of me? I've often said that I wished people could realize all their dreams and wealth and fame, and so that they could see that it's not where you're going to find your sense of completion.
And that quiet refusal to always be chasing more of the same is where Jim Carrey's freedom comes from. But if you're ready to confront a creepier side of the industry, watch this lost clip of Mel Gibson's warnings about Hollywood that now sound like a chilling prophecy 30 years later, and subscribe to Elites Exposed for more.